Picture this. You wake up tomorrow, but instead of your comfortable bed and morning coffee, you're lying on a reed mat in a mud brick house along the banks of the Euphrates River. The year is 2000 BCE, and you're about to experience 24 hours that will make you kiss the ground of the 21st century when you return. Welcome to ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, they call it. But here's what the history books don't tell you. This cradle had thorns, sharp ones. You're about to discover why surviving just one day in the world's first cities required more luck, grit, and divine intervention than most people experience in a lifetime. So take a deep breath of that air-conditioned comfort, because we're about to plunge you into a world where every sunrise was a gamble, every meal was a potential death sentence, and every night you went to sleep wondering if you'd see another dawn. This isn't just history. This is survival. Chapter 1. Dawn of the Riverlands. A medieval illuminated manuscript scene of a stone bridge over the river. Travelers in cloaks cross with horses and donkeys carrying goods. A castle towers faint and awe. The distance, stylized trees line the banks, manuscript style, vibrant yet muted tones. If you thought waking up was difficult, wait until you experience the morning routine of ancient Mesopotamia. In your world, morning means stumbling to the coffee maker, maybe checking your phone, perhaps complaining about having to take a shower. Here, morning means embarking on a series of tasks that would qualify as CrossFit workouts in the 21st century. If CrossFit included the constant possibility of death by dehydration, food poisoning, or scorpion sting, your first priority, like every living creature in this sun-baked landscape, is water. But this isn't a matter of walking to the kitchen sink and turning a handle. No, obtaining water in ancient Mesopotamia is an expedition that requires planning, physical strength, and a healthy dose of courage. You need to make your way to the nearest canal or well, carrying whatever containers you can find, and hope that the water you bring back won't kill you faster than dehydration would. You look around your modest dwelling for something to carry. Water in. Your options are limited. A few clay jars of various sizes, their surfaces rough and porous, and what appears to be a leather bag that's seen better days, possibly better decades. The clay jars are heavy even when empty, and you quickly realize that the physics of carrying water haven't changed in 4,000 years. Water is heavy, containers are heavy, and you're about to become very intimate with both facts. Hoisting the largest jar onto your hip, there are no convenient handles, just a smooth, rounded surface that seems designed to slip from your grasp. At the worst possible moment, you venture out into the brightening streets. The sun is still low, but already the air shimmers with heat waves that make the distant buildings dance like mirages. The journey to the canal is a lesson in ancient urban planning, which is to say, there wasn't much planning at all. The streets twist and turn with no apparent logic, designed by necessity rather than efficiency. You quickly get lost in the maze of identical-looking mud brick walls, each turn revealing another narrow passage that could lead to water, or could lead you deeper, into the labyrinth of the ancient city. Finally, you hear the sound of voices and the splash of water, and you follow these sounds like a desert traveler following an oasis mirage. What you find is both reassuring and alarming. There are other people here, filling their own containers, but they're not the cheerful neighbors of a suburban morning. These are people who have been shaped by hardship, their faces etched with lines that speak of too much sun, too little food, and the constant stress of survival. The canal itself is a marvel of engineering and a hazard to health in equal measure. It's clearly artificial, carved and maintained by human effort, channeling the life-giving waters of the Euphrates throughout the city. But it's also brown with silt, dotted with floating debris, and surrounded by the kind of mud that squishes ominously under your feet and releases gases that make you wonder what exactly is decomposing beneath the surface. You watch the other water gatherers trying to learn the proper technique. There's clearly an art to this. dipping the jar to avoid the scum on the surface, filling it enough to be worthwhile, but not so much that you can't carry it, checking for visible signs of contamination that might indicate this particular section of canal is more dangerous than usual. Your first attempt at filling the jar is a disaster. You dip too deep, your arms aren't strong enough to control the container once it starts to fill, and you nearly fall face first into the murky water. The locals watch your struggles with a mixture of amusement and irritation. You're holding up the line, and in a world where every task takes exponentially longer than it should, wasting time is a serious offense. After several embarrassing attempts, you manage to fill your jar about halfway. It's heavier than you expected, much heavier. Your arms are already shaking, and you haven't even started the journey home. You begin to understand why people in ancient times were so much more muscular than modern humans. Every single task was strength training. The walk back is a nightmare of physics and endurance. The jar, which felt manageable when you first lifted it, seems to gain weight with every step. Your arms burn, your back aches, and the rough surface of the clay container chafes against your skin. You have to stop every few dozen steps to rest, setting the jar down carefully to avoid the disaster of spilled water and broken pottery. By the time you reach your dwelling, you're exhausted, soaked in sweat, and you've only completed the first task of the day. Modern, you would have turned on a tap, filled a glass, and been done in 30 seconds. Ancient you has spent the better part of an hour obtaining water that you're not even sure is safe to drink. But water is only the beginning. Next comes the morning meal, which requires its own series of Herculean labors. Breakfast in ancient Mesopotamia doesn't come from a box or a drive-through. It starts with grain, barley, if you're lucky, that must be processed from its raw state into something resembling food. You locate a grinding stone, a simple but effective tool that consists of a large, flat stone base and a smaller stone that you roll back and forth to crush the grain. It looks simple enough, but like everything else in this world, simple doesn't mean easy. You pour a small amount of barley onto the grinding surface and begin the process of reducing it to flour. The work is immediately backbreaking. You have to lean your full weight into the rolling stone, pressing down while simultaneously moving it back and forth. The barley is tough, resistant to your efforts, and your progress is measured in tiny increments. Your shoulders burn, your wrists ache, and you've barely made a dent in the small pile of grain. After what feels like hours, but is probably only minutes, you have a small amount of coarse flour. It's not the fine white powder you're used to. From modern grocery stores, this is rough, uneven, full of bits of husk and probably small stones that weren't properly separated from the grain. But it's food, or at least the raw material for food. Now comes the challenge of making fire. In your world, this means turning a dial or flicking a switch. Here, it means coaxing flame from materials that seem determined to remain unburned. You have some dried dung. Yes, animal dung is the primary fuel in this wood-scarce environment, and some dry reeds. You also have what appears to be a fire-starting kit, some flint, a piece of metal, and some tinder that's basically just finely. Shredded plant material. The process of making fire is humbling in ways you never expected. Striking flint against metal seems like it should produce immediate results, but your technique is all wrong. Either you don't get a spark at all, or the spark dies before it can catch the tinder. Your hands quickly become sore from the repeated striking, and you begin to understand why maintaining a fire was so important in ancient times. Starting one from scratch is a major undertaking. Finally, after numerous attempts and growing frustration, you manage to coax a small flame from your tinder. Now comes the delicate task of feeding this flame without smothering it. The dried reeds catch easily, but burn fast. The dung burns slower, but is harder to ignite. It's a balancing act that requires constant attention and a deep understanding of fire behavior that you simply don't possess. Your fire keeps threatening to die out, and you find yourself blowing on it frantically, adding fuel in increasingly desperate attempts to keep it alive. The smoke stings your eyes and makes you cough, and you realize that most ancient peoples probably suffered from chronic respiratory problems from constant exposure to cooking smoke. Eventually, you achieve something resembling a cooking fire. Now you can mix your coarsely ground flour with some of your precious water to make a simple flatbread. But even this basic process is fraught with difficulty. The proportions are guesswork. Too much water, and you have soup. Too little, and you have dust. The cooking surface is just a flat stone placed over your fire, and controlling the temperature is a matter of adjusting the fuel and moving the stone closer to or farther from the flames. Your first attempt at flatbread is a disaster. It sticks to the stone, burns on one side while remaining raw on the other, and tastes like a combination of charcoal and sand. But it's food, technically, and in a world where hunger is a constant companion, you eat it anyway. As you chew your disappointing breakfast, you realize that you've been working for hours and have accomplished what a modern person could do in minutes. Your muscles ache, your hands are covered in burns and scrapes, and you're already dreading the next meal. The simple act of feeding yourself has become an endurance test that would challenge a trained athlete, but there are more morning tasks waiting. Your clothing, such as it is, needs attention. The simple linen tunic you're wearing is already dirty from your morning labors, and in a world without washing machines or even adequate soap, keeping clothes clean is another full-time job. You examine the garment and realize it's already showing signs of wear that would have sent your modern clothes to the trash bin weeks ago. Washing clothes means another trip to the canal, more hauling of water, and then the laborious process of scrubbing fabric against stones while hoping the garments hold together. The soap is crude, made from animal fat and ash, and it's harsh enough to leave your hands raw and irritated. As the sun climbs higher and the heat becomes increasingly oppressive, you're forced to acknowledge a fundamental truth about ancient life. Everything takes forever, everything hurts, and everything carries the risk of failure that could mean the difference between comfort and misery, or even between life and death. The morning grind isn't just a figure of speech here, it's a literal description of the crushing routine that consumes most of your waking hours. Every task that you accomplish in your modern life with the flip of a switch or the push of a button requires hours of physical labor here. Your body, soft from modern conveniences, is already rebelling against the demands of ancient survival, and this is just the morning. The day stretches ahead of you like an endurance test designed by someone who clearly has never heard of the concept of work-life balance. But there is no choice but to continue, because in ancient Mesopotamia, stopping means dying, and you're not ready for that particular historical experience just yet. Now that you've survived the morning routine, barely, it's time to confront one of the most fundamental aspects of ancient Mesopotamian life: food. But forget everything you think you know about meals. This isn't about nutrition labels, food pyramids, or wondering whether your coffee is fair trade. This is about caloric survival in a world where your next meal might literally be your last. And not because you're on a diet. Your stomach is growling with a ferocity that makes you realize just how inadequate your breakfast was. That charcoal-flavored flatbread you choked down hours ago has long since been consumed by the physical demands of ancient life. And your body is sending increasingly urgent signals that it needs more fuel. But getting food in ancient Mesopotamia isn't just about satisfying hunger. It's about navigating a minefield of potential poisoning, contamination, and social protocols that could get you killed if you mess them up. The staple food here isn't rice or potatoes or anything you'd recognize from your modern grocery store. It's barley, lots and lots of barley. Barley bread, barley porridge, barley beer, and barley everything else. If ancient Mesopotamians had a food pyramid, barley would be the entire base, middle, and probably the top two. But here's what the history books don't tell you. Barley, when it's not properly processed, can be host to some truly terrifying fungi that will make you hallucinate, vomit, and possibly die in that order. You watch as a neighbor prepares the midday meal, and you quickly realize that cooking here is less like following a recipe and more like performing chemistry experiments with potentially explosive results. Every ingredient must be carefully inspected for signs of spoilage, contamination, or the kinds of mold that can turn a simple meal into a trip to whatever passes for the afterlife in ancient Mesopotamian religion. The bread-making process you witnessed this morning was just the beginning. Real bread, the kind that might actually sustain you through the day, requires better flour, more time, and access to an oven that doesn't belong to you. Most families don't have their own ovens. Instead, they rely on communal bread ovens that are owned and operated by professional bakers. This means waiting in line, paying fees, and hoping that the baker hasn't decided to cut corners with ingredients that might have been fresh sometime last week. You join the queue at the local bakery, clutching your own prepared dough like a precious artifact. The line moves slowly, partly because the oven can only handle so many loaves at once, and partly because every transaction involves extended negotiations about payment, quality, and timing. Currency exists, but it's not the standardized coins you're used to. Instead, payment might be in silver by weight, in other food items, or in promises of future labor that require complex social agreements to enforce. The bakery itself is a sweltering cave of heat and smoke that makes your morning cooking fire seem like a pleasant campfire. The oven is a massive stone structure that radiates heat like a furnace, and the baker, shirtless and gleaming with sweat, moves around it with the practiced efficiency of someone who's been doing this since childhood. The bread that emerges is dense, dark, and it bears little resemblance to the fluffy loaves of your modern supermarket. But it's substantial, filling, and if you're lucky, free of the kinds of additives that could kill you. While bread is the foundation of every meal, the real social lubricant of ancient Mesopotamian society is beer. Not the carefully crafted microbrews of your time, but a thick, nutritious, and slightly alcoholic beverage that serves as both food and drink. Beer here isn't about getting drunk, though that's certainly a side effect. It's about consuming calories and staying hydrated with something that's safer than water. The beer-making process is fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. It starts with barley that's been allowed to sprout, then dried and ground into malt. This malt is mixed with water and left to ferment, relying on wild yeasts that may or may not produce the desired results. The final product is thick enough to chew, sweet enough to provide energy, and alcoholic enough to kill some of the bacteria that would otherwise make you violently ill. You're offered a bowl of beer by a neighbor, and you quickly learn that refusing food or drink in ancient Mesopotamia is not just rude, it's potentially dangerous. Social bonds here are maintained through shared meals, and alienating your neighbors could mean losing access to the mutual aid networks that keep everyone alive. So you accept the bowl despite your modern reservations about drinking something that looks like chunky soup and smells like fermented feet. The beer is an experience. It's sweet and sour at the same time, with a texture that requires serious chewing. The alcohol content is low by modern standards, but it's enough to provide a mild buzz that helps take the edge off the constant stress of ancient survival. More importantly, it's packed with calories and nutrients that your body desperately needs. You can understand why beer was considered a dietary staple rather than a recreational beverage, but beer and bread are just the foundation of ancient Mesopotamian cuisine. The real variety comes from the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, which provide fish, and from the date palms that grow in profusion throughout the region. Dates are everywhere: fresh dates, dried dates, date syrup, and date wine. They're sweet, nutritious, and most importantly, they keep well in the desert climate. If barley is the staff of life here, dates are the dessert, condiment, and emergency ration all rolled into one. The fish from the rivers are abundant, but come with their own set of risks. These waters aren't the pristine streams of nature documentaries. They're working rivers that carry runoff from upstream cities, including sewage, animal waste, and industrial pollution from metalworking and pottery making. The fish may be contaminated with parasites, bacteria, or toxins that can cause anything from stomach upset to death. You watch as a fisherman brings his catch to the market, and you realize that buying fish here requires expertise you simply don't possess. You need to know how to tell fresh fish from spoiled fish by sight, smell, and touch. You need to understand which species are safe to eat and which might carry diseases. Most importantly, you need to know how to prepare fish in ways that minimize the risk of food poisoning without access to modern refrigeration or cooking thermometers. The fish that passes inspection is still just the raw material for a meal. Cooking it properly requires maintaining the right temperature in your fire, knowing when it's done without overcooking it to leather, and having access to seasonings that can mask the sometimes questionable flavor of river fish. Salt is available but expensive. Herbs are seasonal and must be carefully preserved. And spices are luxury items that most people can't afford. Vegetables exist, but they're not the abundant produce of modern agriculture. Onions, garlic, and leeks grow well in the irrigation system, but they require constant tending to prevent them from being destroyed by pests, floods, or the salt buildup that plagues irrigated soil. Lettuce and cucumbers are available in season, but they're grown in soil fertilized with human waste, which means they require thorough washing with water that may itself be contaminated. The concept of food safety, as you understand it, simply doesn't exist. There are no health inspectors, no refrigeration, no understanding of bacteria or viruses. Food poisoning is considered bad luck or divine punishment rather than a preventable consequence of poor hygiene. People eat what's available when it's available, and they deal with the consequences as they come. Meal preparation is a communal activity that involves everyone in the household. Children help by maintaining fires, grinding grain, and fetching water. Women typically manage the cooking, but men are involved in food procurement, whether through farming, fishing, hunting, or trading. Everyone has a role because everyone's survival depends on the success of every meal. The actual eating is as much about social ritual as nutrition. Meals are eaten with your hands from communal bowls, which means that personal hygiene directly affects everyone's health. Before eating, you're expected to wash your hands, but the water for washing may be the same contaminated canal water you've been using for everything else. The social pressure to participate in communal eating is intense, but so is the risk of contracting whatever diseases your dining companions might be carrying. As you sit down to your first full meal in ancient Mesopotamia, you're struck by how much mental energy is required just to eat safely. Every bite requires evaluation. Is this piece of bread free of mold? Is this fish cooked enough? Has this vegetable been properly cleaned? You find yourself eating slowly, not from any sense of dining etiquette, but from the very real fear that eating too quickly might prevent you from detecting the warning signs of spoiled food before it's too late. The flavors are intense but unfamiliar. Everything tastes earthier, more fermented, and somehow more alive than modern food. There are no preservatives to extend shelf life, no standardized processing to ensure consistency. Each meal is a unique combination of ingredients that reflects the specific conditions of that day, what was available, what was affordable, and what managed to avoid spoiling since the last meal. As the meal winds down and the afternoon heat becomes unbearable, you realize that you've just participated in one of humanity's oldest and most essential activities. Sharing food has built civilizations, maintained social bonds, and kept people alive for thousands of years, but it's also been a source of disease, conflict, and death throughout history. Your stomach is finally full, your thirst is temporarily quenched, and you've managed to avoid any immediate signs of food poisoning. But the afternoon stretches ahead, bringing new challenges that will test whether the calories you've consumed are enough to sustain you through the next phase of your ancient survival adventure. The sun is now high overhead, promising heat that will make this morning's warmth seem like air conditioning. It's time to find shade, rest, and prepare for whatever the ancient world decides to throw at you next. By now, you've noticed that your modern clothes aren't exactly suited for life in ancient Mesopotamia. That cotton t-shirt that seemed so comfortable this morning is now soaked with sweat, clinging to your skin like a wet dish rag, and providing about as much protection from the elements as tissue paper. Your jeans, designed for the air-conditioned world of the 21st century, have become leg-shaped ovens that trap heat and chafe with every movement. It's time to understand how people actually dressed in this unforgiving environment, and why getting it wrong could literally kill you. Clothing in ancient Mesopotamia wasn't fashion. It was survival technology. Every thread, every layer, every accessory served a specific purpose in the ongoing battle against heat, cold, insects, disease, and social disgrace. The people who lived here for thousands of years had figured out through trial and deadly error exactly what worked and what didn't, and their solutions were far more sophisticated than your modern wardrobe. The foundation of Mesopotamian clothing is linen, not the crisp white linen of modern luxury hotels, but a coarser, more practical fabric woven from flax that grew along the riverbanks. This isn't chosen for comfort, it's chosen for survival. Linen breathes in ways that cotton doesn't, wicking moisture away from the skin and allowing air to circulate even in the suffocating heat of a Mesopotamian summer. More importantly, linen doesn't trap the kinds of bacteria and parasites that thrive in warm, moist environments, a crucial consideration when bathing is a luxury most people can't afford. You watch as a local woman demonstrates the art of getting dressed for desert survival. Her tunic is loose-fitting, extending from her shoulders to her ankles in a simple rectangular design that maximizes airflow while minimizing exposed skin. This isn't modesty for its own sake. It's protection from the sun that would literally cook exposed flesh within hours. The sleeves are long but loose, creating pockets of air that act as natural insulation against the heat. But linen alone isn't enough. Over the basic tunic, she adds layers that seem counterintuitive to your heat-addled brain. More fabric means more heat, right? Wrong. The layering system works like a sophisticated climate control system, trapping air between the layers to create insulation that works both ways, keeping heat out during the day and keeping body warmth in during the surprisingly cold desert nights. The colors aren't random either. That undyed natural color of raw linen isn't just because ancient people lacked fashion sense. It's because light colors reflect sunlight, while dark colors absorb it. Wearing black in ancient Mesopotamia wasn't a fashion statement, it was a death sentence. The subtle earth tones that dominate ancient clothing are the result of dyes that were both available and practical, creating colors that hide the inevitable. Stains of daily life while providing some protection from the sun's harmful rays. The most crucial piece of the outfit, you quickly realize, is the head covering. Modern people think of hats as accessories, but here, they're essential survival equipment. The head wrap isn't just a simple cloth thrown over the head, it's an engineered system that protects the head, neck, and face from sun, wind, and sand, while still allowing for vision and hearing. The fabric can be adjusted to cover more or less of the face depending on conditions, and it can be wrapped to create insulation or ventilation as needed. You attempt to replicate the head wrapping technique you've observed and immediately understand why this is a skill that takes years to master. Too loose and it falls off or fails to provide protection. Too tight and it restricts circulation or breathing. The amount of fabric needs to be precisely calculated to provide coverage without creating so much bulk that it becomes unwearable. After several attempts, you achieve something that resembles the local style, though you suspect it would fall apart under any kind of real-world stress. Footwear is another crucial element that your modern sensibilities have completely misunderstood. Those comfortable sneakers that seemed so practical? They're death traps in this environment. The synthetic materials don't breathe, creating perfect breeding grounds for the kinds of fungal infections that can leave you unable to walk. The cushioned soles that feel so comfortable on modern pavement provide no protection against the stones, thorns, and scorpion stings that lurk in ancient streets. Local footwear is simple but effective. Leather sandals with thick soles and minimal upper coverage. The leather is tough enough to protect against most hazards underfoot, but open enough to allow air circulation and quick drying when you inevitably step in something wet and unpleasant. The straps are positioned to hold the sandals securely, without restricting circulation, and they can be quickly removed when necessary. Important when you need to wade through irrigation canals or mud, but clothing serves more than just practical purposes in ancient Mesopotamia. It's also a complex system of social communication that can mean the difference between acceptance and exile, or even life and death. What you wear tells everyone around you your social status, your occupation, your religious affiliations, and your place in the community hierarchy. Getting these signals wrong isn't just embarrassing, it can be dangerous. The quality of your fabric speaks volumes about your economic status. Fine linen that's been bleached white and woven with intricate patterns signals wealth and high social standing. Coarse, roughly woven fabric in natural colors marks you as a laborer or peasant. Wool, imported from highland areas, is both expensive and impractical in the heat, making it a luxury item that only the wealthy can afford and wear only during the cooler months. The length and style of your garments carry their own messages. Longer tunics suggest wealth. You can afford enough fabric to be impractical, and you don't need to perform physical labor that would be hindered by excess clothing. Shorter, more practical garments mark you as someone who works for a living. The presence or absence of decorative elements like embroidery, metallic threads, or imported dyes immediately places you in the social hierarchy. Accessories are even more loaded with meaning. Jewelry isn't just decoration, it's wearable wealth that can be easily transported and traded. The materials, silver, gold, precious stones, or simple carved bone, immediately communicate your economic status. But jewelry also serves practical purposes. Amulets and charms are believed to provide protection from evil spirits, disease, and bad luck. Not wearing the appropriate protective accessories isn't just unfashionable, it's considered recklessly dangerous. You discover that even the way you arrange your clothing carries social significance. The drape of your outer garment, the way your head covering is wrapped, even the manner in which you tie your belt, all send signals about your identity and intentions. These aren't arbitrary fashion rules. They're a complex communication system that allows people to navigate social interactions safely in a world where misunderstandings can have deadly consequences. The maintenance of clothing is yet another full-time job that you've never had to consider. In your world, dirty clothes go in a machine, clean clothes come out. Here, keeping your garments clean and in good repair is a constant battle against dust, sweat, stains, and wear. The harsh soap made from animal fat and ash is tough on fabric, as well as skin, and the process of washing clothes by beating them against stones in contaminated canal water often does more damage than the dirt you're trying to remove. Repairs are constant and crucial. A torn garment isn't just unfashionable, it can expose skin to sun damage, provide entry points for insects and parasites, and signal to others that you're unable to maintain your possessions. But thread is expensive, Needles are precious, and the skills required for invisible mending take years to develop. Most people spend their evenings by firelight, performing the endless task of maintaining their limited wardrobe. As the day progresses and your improvised ancient outfit begins to make sense, you realize that you're participating in one of humanity's oldest technologies. Clothing isn't just about covering nakedness. It's about creating a portable microenvironment that allows humans to survive in climates that would otherwise kill them. The simple tunic and sandals you're wearing represent thousands of years of trial and error, passed down through generations of people who paid for their mistakes with their lives. Your modern clothes, designed for comfort and style in climate-controlled environments, are revealed as the luxury items they truly are. The ancient garments you're now wearing are tools, sophisticated, time-tested, life-saving tools that have allowed humans to thrive in one of the world's harshest environments. As the afternoon heat reaches its peak and you seek shelter in whatever shade you can find, you're grateful for every thread of your ancient outfit. The loose linen allows what little breeze there is to reach your skin. The layered system manages your body temperature automatically, and the head covering shields your face from the kind of sun exposure that would have left you with dangerous burns in your modern clothes. But clothing is just one element of survival in ancient Mesopotamia. As you rest in the blessed shade, your body protected by thousands of years of textile wisdom, you prepare for the next challenge, the afternoon. Work that will test whether all this careful preparation has been enough to keep you alive in the cradle of civilization. As you prepare to leave ancient Mesopotamia and return to your climate-controlled, technologically mediated, historically unprecedented modern existence, you stand at the threshold between two worlds that are simultaneously foreign to each other and fundamentally connected. The mud brick walls that have sheltered you, the irrigation canals that have sustained you, and the social networks that have protected you represent humanity's first successful attempt to create something more than mere survival. They represent the birth of civilization itself. Your 24 hours in the cradle of civilization have revealed truths about human nature, social organization, and the relationship between technology and humanity that extend far beyond historical curiosity. You've experienced firsthand what it took for your ancestors to drag themselves out of the wilderness and create the foundations upon which all subsequent human development has been built. The price they paid in physical hardship, social constraint, and individual sacrifice was enormous, but so were the achievements that made your modern life possible. Every convenience you've ever taken for granted, clean water from a tap, food from a refrigerator, shelter from weather, protection from disease, education, entertainment, individual freedom, represents the accumulated benefits of thousands of years of human effort by people who lived far more difficult lives than you've ever imagined. The smartphone in your pocket contains more computing power than entire ancient civilizations, but it exists only because ancient Mesopotamians first figured out how to smelt metal, create writing systems, and organize complex societies. But your ancient experience has also revealed human capabilities and social technologies that might be valuable even today. The physical resilience, practical skills, and environmental knowledge that were necessary for ancient survival represent forms of competence that could enhance modern life. The social solidarity, community cooperation, and shared purpose that characterized ancient societies offer models for addressing modern challenges that individual effort and technological solutions can't solve alone. The ancient people you've encountered weren't primitive versions of modern humans. They were fully developed human beings who created sophisticated solutions to the fundamental challenges of existence under conditions that would defeat most contemporary people. Their innovations in agriculture, urban planning, governance, and social organization were as revolutionary in their time as modern technological developments are today. They deserve not just historical acknowledgement, but genuine respect for achievements that required extraordinary intelligence, courage, and cooperation. Your journey through ancient Mesopotamia ends where it began, with sunrise over the rivers. That gave life to humanity's first great civilization, but you're no longer the same person who began this journey. You've been changed by direct experience of what human beings are capable of achieving and enduring when survival is at stake. You've learned that civilization isn't inevitable or automatic. It's a daily choice that requires constant effort, cooperation, and sacrifice by people who understand that their individual welfare depends entirely on collective survival. The challenges facing modern humanity, climate change, social inequality, technological disruption, global conflict, are no less serious than those faced by ancient Mesopotamians. They require the same kinds of resilience, innovation, and social cooperation that allowed your ancestors to build civilization in the first place. The lessons you've learned in the ancient world aren't historical artifacts, they're contemporary resources for understanding what human beings can accomplish when they work together in the face of overwhelming odds. As you return to your modern world, you carry with you not just gratitude for contemporary conveniences, but also deeper wisdom about human nature and social organization that comes from direct experience of how civilization actually works. You've seen how individual survival depends on community cooperation, how technological innovation emerges from practical necessity, and how social institutions develop to manage the eternal tension between individual desires and collective needs. The ancient Mesopotamians who created the foundation of your modern world didn't know they were making history. They were just trying to survive another day in a harsh and unpredictable environment. But their daily struggles for water, food, shelter, health, and security created the institutions, technologies, and social practices that continue to shape human life thousands of years later. Their legacy isn't just in museums and archaeology sites. It's in every aspect of how modern people live, work, and relate to each other. Your 24 hours in ancient Mesopotamia end with dawn breaking over the eternal rivers, illuminating a landscape where human beings first learned to live together in permanent communities, to preserve knowledge through writing, to create surplus through agriculture, and to build monuments that would outlast individual lifespans. You've witnessed the birth of everything that makes human beings more than just another species struggling to survive in a hostile world. The sun that rises on the ancient world is the same sun that rises on the modern world, but you see it now, with eyes that have witnessed the dawn of civilization itself. You return to your contemporary life enriched by direct experience of humanity's greatest achievement, the creation of complex cooperative societies that allow individual human beings to transcend the limitations of their biological inheritance and work together to build something larger and more enduring than any individual life. The cradle of civilization has rocked you through 24 hours of revelation, challenge, and transformation. You survived the ancient world, but more importantly, the ancient world has survived in you, in your new understanding of what human beings are capable of achieving when they commit themselves to the difficult, dangerous, and eternally necessary work of building and maintaining civilization in an uncertain world. Welcome back to the modern era. You've earned it.